you couldn't just be the one cog in the machine that was following those rules. You had to, we started to see agreements that where we had to agree that yes, if we have joint clients in a certain, region, we have to operate in a certain way.
Robert, thank you so much for your time. We're here with Robert Gilbreath, who, as an executive, has seen it all and worked with them all in the e-commerce space with the largest players and the most exciting new startups. And you've worked with so many people in your time in e-commerce. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. We got to know each other when I was working in e-commerce as well. And that is a space that is never slowing down when it comes to innovation and adapting and focusing relentlessly on customer experience. So Robert, I just want to dive straight into it. We are seeing this global, at first it felt like a hype maybe, but very quickly people start to realize this is a seismic shift in how we, use technology. The influence of AI in e-commerce innovation. Like from your angle where you work with so many different companies, what are you seeing? Like what's exciting you? What is keeping you up at night?
Hey, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's so nice to catch up like we did before we started recording. But we talked about this a little bit before you hit record. But yes, AI is here. We are. I like to talk about it that it's been around, right? Machine learning and AI is not a brand new thing, but what happened nearly a year ago now with OpenAI and some of the tools that they released, I almost equate that to, let's go back 12, 13, 14 years ago when the Volusions and the Shopifys were early on, and they almost consumerized doing these things online, right? They made it easy. You didn't have to know how to code. You didn't have to do your own hosting. And so to me, a year or so ago, OpenAI kind of put a consumer layer, not in a bad way. I don't mean that it diminishes the value, but they made it more user-friendly, but matured it, right? And so you had this innovative change, which, as a marketing and sales guy, I love it because really they did a wonderful job of that, right? Putting that skin on it. I have clients today, they're wanting to brag about the AI and the machine learning that they're using. And from an e-commerce perspective, the tools that retailers are now being enabled with, to me, as long as the AI, I joke about this, and maybe I should trademark this, what I'm about to say, but as long as the AI is fueled and built using not just artificial intelligence, but actual intelligence, also another AI, right?
Yeah.
Because for a lot of folks, I think there's and we talked about this earlier as well. People, I know you want it, but do you really need it? Right. And so wanting it's great, but let's not try to force a round peg in a square hole, right? And so with some of the clients I'm working with, they've done some interesting things where they're actually, blow that to your question, they're using this massive amount of data that they have or their retail clients have, and they're feeding that into their systems. And it's doing amazing things like chatbots that can actually negotiate with someone and can negotiate in your brand voice. It can understand the math behind the product that you're negotiating on. That's one really interesting example. We all hear about content creation, but there's some other clients of mine who are doing some really smart things with content creation. And it's not just letting ChatGPT write a bunch of garbage. It's actually, again, pulling through content, looking at analytics, using tools like from Google that are available around SEO, and being smarter with it. So it's great that everybody wants it. It's the latest buzz. But as long as they can figure out, how are they going to use it in a way that's actually needed, and it's actually good for the consumers as well, right? It makes that back to the point of user experience. Does it make the user experience better in the end? That's what's going to drive success, right?
Yeah. Now you mentioned a number of things that are really interesting, and you say I know one of those players that did a good job in democratizing or consumerizing new technology. You mentioned one of the platforms, Shopify, and I want to use them as an example for the average person that is not really in the e-commerce industry might look at that and think, oh, great, there's a one-stop shop for everything that I want to do to have my online store or to go to other people's stores. But people that are in the industry know that, if you dig deeper underneath the hood, if you will, there's a whole ecosystem that has to work together to make an experience like that possible. And sometimes those are clear, documented alliances that a Shopify has, or sometimes it's really under the hood and you don't really know that certain elements are being dealt by different organizations throughout a supply chain or a technical ecosystem. Think about shipping companies, think about database services and what have you. When you keep that in mind, knowing that e-commerce can only really work well if a lot of different cogs work really well together. When you think about this innovation, and to your point, companies really trying to be out there with like, oh, we're trying this different, we're trying that different. What's your opinion on not just the need to collaborate, but also as an industry, need for global standards that people are adopting, or even if you take that one step further, we're starting to see that happen with AI now, legislation. What does that look like, right? We've seen that in different industries. E-commerce has been often a little bit the Wild West, where a lot of things were going on. What's your take on scaling, in a good way, this innovation, but through working together?
No, and I love the way you talk about it being a little Wild West. Like I personally started selling online on eBay, maybe the first or second year that eBay was even launched. And talk about Wild West, right? Yeah. And we see this over time. These things get sort of convoluted. It gets messy. There has to be legislative. Like I would have to say I'm fairly not political. Just I want legislation to be in place to protect, right? And so I would say from a collaborative partnership perspective, in that case, and I've seen this, I was early on with ShipStation, as you know, and went through lots of partnership, even being acquired by a publicly traded company, in which that involves different aspects of how a business needs to be run. Through the years, I would say in situations where, let's talk like GDPR happened, right? And so, partnering and understanding you couldn't just be the one cog in the machine that was following those rules. You had to, we started to see agreements that where we had to agree that yes, if we have joint clients in a certain, region, we have to operate in a certain way. So it almost becomes inevitable that if you can figure that out with partners, that strengthens that relationship, right? In some cases, it allows you to do business in a different region because of that, using that partnership to understand the situation. So the other thing is, like, if you think about partnerships, I have a little bit of a mantra around this. You have to have the 3 W's. It's got to be win-win-win. So 3 W's, between the two partner companies, that has to really make sense. And then it becomes this interesting Venn diagram where the client, the retailer, whatever, it has to make sense to them too. And it is possible for that to be it can be very mutual. I guess a side note, a lot of these times, and you probably saw this in your life on the e-com side of things too, sometimes the partnership doesn't mean necessarily that you've got this amazing relationship. A lot of the partnerships are somewhat mechanic, right? And they're somewhat checklist, and that's okay if that's the way those partners have to work together. Again, as long as in the case of an e-commerce toolbox, right, that the retailers are getting what they want, which allows them to provide to the consumer in a better way. But it's definitely it's a different mix depending on who the partners are, right? So, and I know you have experience in that, even in your more recent endeavors.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. So Robert, if I am, which I am, I know I am definitely an e-commerce consumer. I think everybody is, whether or not you realize it. But I definitely do a lot of my commerce, digitally. For me as a user, as a consumer in 2024, based on what you're seeing, what should I be excited about in 2024? From
a consumer standpoint, oh wow, yeah. I mean, not to not to give too much hope, but you're going to start seeing more AI, machine learning, like used in a more mature way. You might not know that it's even happening, but whether folks want to know this or not, right? You're being tracked online, and I myself as a consumer, and maybe I'm biased because of the world that I'm in, that's actually helpful to me, right? Having a saved group of things that I've shopped at, or having advertisement sent to me to remind me of thing or show me something, that's all very helpful. We're going to start seeing that, and it's going to appear smarter. And I think we're going to see people saying, "Oh, that's the machines taking over, or the bots taking over," but it's really just going to be companies in our ecosystem being smarter with that, right, and maturing what they frankly have already been doing in the past in more mechanical ways. So did you get that?
I got it.
People don't want to be an avatar. People don't want to be a cartoon. When we want to have that trust, that authentic experience like we're having now, I would love to have the same experience with you, but albeit maybe in a three-dimensional immersive space. But I really see Jasper.